something clicked in him. And he decided he was going to break the protocols that he was just recently certified on. And he breaks those protocols. He opens this body bag and he starts feeling around for a pulse. He couldn't feel one. So he had to unzip the body bag and take more straps off the body. He went down to the femoral artery, which is down on the inside of the leg. And when he made contact at the femoral area, I felt a shock, almost like an electrical outlet shock, as if you sparked something. That's what it felt like. It made me jump where I was. And I could tell he sensed or felt something as well. And that was enough to push him into action.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Vincent Tolman on the show with us today. Vinny's story is amazing because after being dead for over an hour, he came back to life inside a body bag. During his NDE in heaven, Vinny experienced the power of unconditional love and returned with profound insights. I'm going to be asking him about the divine encounters he had, the wisdom he gained, and most importantly, how this NDE has transformed his life. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go chat with Vinny. Vinny, welcome to the show. I'm so delighted you could join us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Julie. It's awesome. It's my pleasure.
You died and came back to life, my man. What happened?
I guess I decided regular old life was a little too boring, and so I needed to have an experience with death. What really happened was I was experimenting with some newer supplements, and a pretty popular one at the time, and I ended up ODing on that supplement. Me and my best friend, we both took it at the same time, and
What
he
was
was
the supplement?
it was a product called Furanone Dihydro, which at the time it would help your muscles recover a lot faster than normal. So when you're doing bodybuilding, where you get your gains is from your muscle recovery. That's where they grow bigger, better, after they get ripped and torn. So, the supplement, it allowed you to work the same group of muscles every day or every other day without rotation in between. So for someone that was isolating certain muscle groups, it was a great tool to use. And it was quite popular at the time. So a lot of stores were all sold out, and there was like 6-month wait lists just to get some. So me and my buddy, we went online and we ordered some. And this was in 2003. The internet was still kind of a newer place. And what we didn't realize is what we were ordering was from a company in Thailand. And we were ordering an undiluted concentrated form. So we took our normal little bottle cap. It was a liquid supplement. And that bottle cap was actually about 20 times the dosage of what we were used to.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
So we both felt it right away. We decided we'd go get something to eat and we'd feel better probably. So we headed down to the little burger joint down the street, and I made it into the bathroom and I locked the door. But my buddy, he went in and collapsed on the dining booth, and they saw him, empty his stomach right onto the dining booth. So they called emergency. They got him hauled away in an ambulance, but nobody knew I was in the bathroom. So they didn't find me for almost an hour later, and I was found DOA. I was dead when they found me.
So then what happened?
Well, for me, from my perspective, I was feeling this nausea. I was feeling dizzy. I remember going into that bathroom. I felt like the room was like moving on me. And I remember reaching out and grabbing for what I thought was like a safety railing. And then the next thing I know, I feel like I'm plunged into electricity. I feel like everything in me is more alive than it's ever been. And I'm looking around, I can't distinguish anything around me. But in this process of feeling this weightlessness and no pain, which pain was gone instantly. And, being a bodybuilder back then, or amateur anyway, I was always in pain, always. And in some form of pain. It was like discomfort and pain was part of your daily life if you're a bodybuilder. And I had no pain. So that was the first distinct thing that I could remember is where did all the pain go and how did it just turn off like that? And then in front of me, I could see this kind of fogginess starting to clear up. And as it cleared up, I could see I was looking down on a room. And to me, it looked kind of like I was sitting in a movie theater looking at a movie screen, but what was on the movie screen was this image looking down on on this dead body on the ground. But the body didn't look like me at that point. The skin color was not human. It was like purple and bright yellow already. Um, even the neck of the body had swollen already, and it was wider than the jaw. So it didn't even dawn on me for a second that it was my body. I thought I was observing something. And I thought for sure, me is up here. I'm up here watching this. I'm watching over where I am. There's no way that could be me. So I observed, and then I did notice I could see my buddy on the other side of the wall. I could see him over there in the dining booth. I saw them find him. I saw them call 911. I saw them take him away in an ambulance. And and then I just kept coming back to this body and just staring at it and kind of feeling bad for whoever this was and
Not knowing
not
that it
knowing it
was
was
you.
me. Yeah, and that it was such a surreal thing, especially in hindsight, what a surreal thing to think that you could be sitting there looking at what is your body but not know it. Um, it wasn't possible because I was up here, it just was not even a possibility. So as I'm processing all of this, I recognize this one customer in the restaurant. He kept going to try to use the bathroom and the door is locked. After like 3 times, he went to the manager and said, "Hey, can you unlock the bathroom? It's been locked for like an hour." So he goes and opens that bathroom, and they find this dead body on the ground. So they call 911 for a second time that day. They get another ambulance there, and in this crew, it was a 3-man crew. There was 2 veteran medics and a rookie medic. And this rookie medic, you could tell he was just brand new. He was like running around a little frantic, but he was really excited about all of this, and he wanted to do a lot more than they were doing. They did their regular protocols. They attempted chest compressions, no result. They put oxygen into the lungs, they forced it in, no result. So they followed their protocols. They did pronounce the body dead right there. They gave a DOA, a time of death DOA.
And you're still watching all this from
And
up
I'm watching
above.
all of it, and I'm like, this is really sad. This poor guy's family. What's going to happen with his family? I remember thinking that, and then I started to notice. In fact, started noticing this right before the ambulance got there. I could hear the thoughts of every person in that room, every person. And when they found the dead body, this assistant manager girl, she's probably like 18, 17 or 18. She was running around telling everybody there's a dead body in the bathroom. Come look, come look. And I could hear everyone's reaction to it. I could hear the thoughts of the customers that were in the dining room and how they were, kind of afraid of all this, and they left as soon as all this was happening, or at least one of them did. And um, I could see and hear all this going on, and it was odd to me that I could hear their thoughts, and I could hear the thoughts of this rookie medic. He kept saying, "Why aren't we doing more? Why aren't we doing more? Why don't we try this? Why don't we?" Being a new guy, he was thinking of all the things he had just been trained on, And it was like he was going through his own punch list. Why didn't we do this? Why don't we do that? He watches as his veteran medics that he's training or with, they bag this body, they make him babysit it in the back of the ambulance while they go out and they fill out paperwork. They got some witness statements, some witness paperwork. They got it all filled out. About 30 to 40 minutes after they arrived, they're leaving the scene, and this rookie is just really berating himself. He wishes that he would have been doing something more. And as he was doing all of this, they pulled away from the scene, and I started to notice this glow start to form on him. And this glow, it truly was like a light was coming out of him, and it started to form around the heart space. And out of nowhere, I hear this really loud voice say, "This one's not dead." And I remember when I heard that, I was looking around thinking, where did that come from?
You heard that in your mind up, like, above everything, or you heard it in his mind?
No, I heard it in my mind. Like, I heard it where I was, and it
Right.
was so loud, it felt like it came from over my head. So I was trying to look back, but I couldn't see anything. I could only see blackness behind me. But all the only thing I could see was this scene that was going on, and it was odd. I had tried to leave the restaurant earlier before the ambulance got there to pick up the body, and something kept pulling me back. But when the ambulance left, I got to go with the ambulance. So obviously, I was tethered to the body, which that's understandable, but I didn't understand that part yet. And so I'm witnessing all this as they're going down the road. He's starting to glow. This loud message goes, "This one's not dead." And I could tell that he heard it or he sensed it, he felt it in some way. He didn't do anything about it though. I could hear his thought of, "No, that was your imagination," or that you were just thinking things. And only a few feet further down the road, he starts to glow even brighter, like really bright. And the light, it starts going from about his waist to above his head.
Now this is still the EMT that's glowing.
Just the medic, yeah,
Okay.
just the rookie. And then a second time I heard, but even louder the second time. It was already loud the first time, but the second time it was almost like a stern yell, or a stern pronouncement. And it was the same message. It was, "This one's not dead." And when he heard it the second time, something clicked in him, and he decided he was going to break the protocols that he was just recently certified on, and through the hurdles of getting, certified as an EMT. He breaks those protocols. He opens this body bag and he starts feeling around for a pulse. He couldn't feel one. So he had to unzip the body bag and take more straps off the body. He went down to the femoral artery, which is down on the inside of the leg. And when he made contact, in at the femoral area, I felt a shock, almost like an electrical outlet shock, as if you sparked something. That's what it felt like. It made me jump where I was, and I could tell he sensed or felt something as well, and that was enough to push him into action. He immediately started feeding oxygen into the lungs. He pulled out a defib unit and hooked it up onto and actually shocked the body. He went for a second round of shock, and got a single heartbeat. And then on the third round of shock, he got a steady heartbeat. And one of those miracles of all of this is that when this happened, they were less than a block away from a trauma center. Even though they weren't headed there, they were headed past the trauma center, to turn the body into a medical examiner's office, or to the state, whatever they do with the dead bodies,
The morgue. The
the morgue.
morgue,
He was
probably,
going to
yeah.
go turn it in there. They had
Yeah.
already, in the process of bagging the body, they had cut a little chunk of skin off the back of the body and had put it in a little sack, like a little baggie. And I don't know what they do with that, but I saw them do that. That was part, and I have the scar for it. Um, so they got this heart started only, a few hundred feet away from a hospital. So they were able to turn right directly into that hospital. The two veteran medics, which they were tearing this guy down as they witnessed him doing this. As soon as they heard the heart start, they stopped and they went ahead and called ahead, so that there was two personnel, and then immediately after that, a bunch of personnel meeting them at the door. So they were able to take the body from there. Still didn't know it was me. I watched as they transfer the body from the gurney at the ambulance into a hospital, like an ICU type bed where they'll work on the body. And as they were doing that, the body went into a full seizure, real bad. And as it was seizing, they still needed to do some work on it. So they started to strap it down. They strapped the two legs, they strapped the right arm. And then when they went to strap the left arm, I felt someone strapping my left arm where I was up here watching above. So I looked down to where my left arm would be, and I saw the left arm of the body. And that's when it was this reckoning, and I felt so ignorant that I could have been watching this whole time. Who knows how much time? We know for sure from the time of pronounced death until the time that the heart started was 47 minutes exactly. And it's like, how could I have not known that that was me? Like, how?
Well, and you had been in the bathroom for an hour before that? So you're talking about, like, an hour and 45 minutes that you
So
were not.
documented 47 minutes because they found me already dead, but likely at least 30 minutes to an hour prior to that. Yeah.
Wow. Alright, so you get to the ER, they're working on you feel your arm, then what happened?
I I had this processing of what was going on. How could this be that I was sitting here watching my own death and not know? The way I like to explain it to people, it would be like pulling up to a stoplight and you look over at a car that looks the same as your car, and there's someone driving and that looks just like you. They're dressed just like you. But you're thinking, well, that can't be me because I'm in this car. And that's the way it felt. Like I'm like, it couldn't have been me. But now I had just found out it was me. So I'm reprocessing everything that I had just seen over the last hour. And it was just turning my insides. Now I didn't have my body, but it felt like I did. I felt like I was in an energetic body. And later I learned that's our true form is energy. We're not just these physical heavy bodies. We are an energetic body before we're a physical body. And so I was in this energetic body, just turning and feeling all these emotions, when out of nowhere I started to see like all the bad things I ever did in my life. All of them, from the youngest age to the current age. But I also saw those things not just from my own eyes. I saw them from the eyes of witnesses of what I did, or of, I had a younger brother that me and him, we were like water and vinegar sometimes. And so I saw a lot of the things that I did to him in retaliation or whatever, but I saw it through his eyes. And I had this whole new view of what my life was, but I had only seen the bad stuff. And so I started to think, why do I exist if this is all that I am? And the very second I thought that, this warmth started to warm all over my back. And then in a flash, I was seeing good thing after good thing after good thing. And it was just ramping up so fast and so much longer than what I call my naughty life review. My good life review was really awesome. It was beautiful. And in the same way, I got to see in times I didn't even know I was doing good things, but the way that those around me were receiving it was in very good ways. So I got to feel that there was some hope around this soul, around who I was. and I got to feel that there was purpose for me being around. And I loved that the good portion was so much longer than the bad portion. Whether that I don't know if that's because 'cause they're doing fast forward or not, but that's the way it felt to me.
And so you're still watching the ER staff working on your body at this point?
I was full on seeing my life, essentially put into my consciousness, almost like a download. It was so fast, but also I could recall it perfectly, even to the single instances that were being brought up for me.
But your spirit was back in your body. I'm trying to figure out, was your spirit still up above?
My spirit was still up above it. I didn't know where my spirit was yet. I was trying to figure out where it was actually. And when I got to the end of seeing any good that I ever did, I felt that warmth again. It was still coming from behind me. So I turned around and I saw this gentleman there, all dressed in white. And he looked pretty much like what Hollywood had trained my American soul to believe what God must look like. And so my first thought was, this is God. And he just smiled with the most loving smile. And without moving his mouth, he said, "No, son, I'm not God." And I was just, I was in awe, number one, because just the communication, you could feel a tremendous power, like great power in what was all going on right there. And so my next thought was, if you're not God, are you Jesus? I thought, I didn't know, that was just my next thought. And he said, "No, son, I'm not Jesus." He said, "I'm your guide. I'm here to help you go wherever you want to go."
What did he sound like? Did he sound like Morgan Freeman or James Earl Jones?
So it's funny when we were writing my story into a book, we had to try to tackle what the sound of the voice was. And to me, it sounded almost like, I'm a Star Wars kid, so it sounded like Obi-Wan Kenobi crossed over with Mr. Miyagi. That's what it sounded like.
Okay.
And to me, that's what it sounded like. But if you embraced both of those with even more love than what you felt through the characters in the movies. But this love, it was just so strong coming from him. And so I took in what he said, that he's my guide and he could take me wherever I wanted to go. And I thought about for a minute. There's a lot of ideas that were popping into my consciousness of where I could possibly go. And I didn't have to think very long. I knew I wanted to go wherever all this love was coming from. And he said that it was coming from my home and his home, and that he could take me there. And I said, "Let's go." And he did ask me though, "Do you want to go back to your body? I can take you back." And I looked back at that body. There was an orderly right when I was looking. There was an orderly like straddling the body, and something was going on, but they had to inject something into like the chest, and it looked like he was beating the body. And it did not look even a little pleasant. It looked horrible. To me, it looked like hell. So I said, "No, I don't want that. I want to go with you. Let's go to where this love is coming from." So we began our journey, and a journey it was. It was quite a journey. It was not just a journey of going from one point in physical universe to another point. It was like traveling through universes, like traveling through dimensions and frequencies. But at the same time, it also felt like, even though we were moving through all this space and distance, we were barely moving a toe. It's like we were going into space, like into the space in between space. And as we did that, I told him, I go, "Hey, I'm Christian. I've accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. I have been baptized. I went through all the things I was taught in church." And I said, "You can just show me what door I walk through." I really believed that. It was not some ego thing. I just really believed it. And even though I knew I was very imperfect, I thought, well, I had what it took. So just show me the way. I'll go walk in. and and I'll say thank you and I'll go live in heaven. And he smiled again and he said, I love that you think that's how it works, but it's a little different than that. And I'm going to have to help you understand more about heaven and about earth and about the relationship between the two of them and where I fit into all of it. So we started there. And, you know, I did think I knew everything because I was 25 years old. Sometimes at 25, you think you know everything. And so I told him, he did share his name with me by then. He called himself Drake. He said his friends call him Drake. So I said, Drake, it's all about love. I know it's all about love. And he said, I love that you think that it's all about love, but there's more to it than that. He explained that if I couldn't figure out who I really was, I actually couldn't give real love. I couldn't receive real love either. So authenticity was the most important thing for me. And he showed me how there was all these different Vinnies, so many. And he showed me that amongst all these different versions of myself, there was one core. And that core was who I really was. And who I was really is at that time. So when I peeled away all these different faces that I pretty much put up for the world, I was able to identify my authentic self. And he was able to let me know what was next. And what was next was to know why I was even on earth. And he posed it to me. Do you know why you were on earth? And I said, yeah, it's so that we could be tested, pass or fail, heaven or hell. We're given trials and tests. If we pass those, we go to heaven. And again, he gave me that just beautiful smile. And the smile was so full of love. You could feel it was not condescending in even the littlest bit. It was so empathetic the way that, a parent looks at a toddler when the toddler walks up with a stick and says, look at my sword. It's like you could tell he knew I was a little delusional with my perception. So he said, the real purpose is not to be tested, not to be put on some kind of test. That I had to pass many tests just before I got here. But to even get here, I'd already passed those tests. And to be here was a reward. And it was a reward to help me identify who I really am as a soul and to figure out how to create, to learn how to create. He showed me that before we come to earth, when we want something, it just starts forming in front of us. Just the desire itself, surrounded by the love that is the structure of our existence. The very thing we want, it just starts forming in front of us. So it's hard for us to get clear on the power of creation. And so he showed me that. That was the second thing he had to teach me is that we're not here on earth to be tested. We're here to be in a classroom, just to learn, to experience, and to connect, to build relationships, to create. And as soon as I could get that, then he told me, now it's about love. It's about loving everyone. It's about all of us being different fingers on God's hand. And that we need to learn how to love all of our fingers, even the ones that look different or act different, or live in different ways. That I needed to learn to love the spark or the core, the soul inside of all beings, all creation. And I felt like I had that one. I felt like I was pretty good with that one. It was an awakening for me, but I felt like I was in a good place for that one. And that's when he got me to the fourth principle, which was to listen to your inner voice. And I kind of joked around with him a little bit there. I told him it's not a good thing to hear voices in my world. And he said, no, no, no. Everyone has an inner voice, like an inner compass. And sometimes it does show up as a voice. Sometimes it shows up as an instinct, or an intuition of sorts, but it shows up and it's there for all of us. And all we have to do is believe it's there and it starts showing up louder. And he said that was like the beginning step for me, is just to recognize that we all have a direct connection to our creator inside, not outside. And that the world convinces you you find the creator outside you. But he was showing me that you can't unless you find the creator inside you first. And that was that inner voice. He went on to teach me a lot. You know, he taught me a few more bullet points along the way, but before you know it, I was seeing another realm, a true physical space, a space that's I feel more real than Earth is. And the amount of light that is in this space is so much that a single blade of grass there has more power, more energy, more light, more love in it than the entire solar system that we live in on Earth. It's that much difference in energy. That's why we need these guides to bring us, into this space. We have to bring our energy up high enough to get there. So he was helping me with that. I recognized that, in this real heaven, it is a place we actually touched down. I felt my energetic body like make contact. And as my toes came down, I didn't have shoes on because guess you don't need shoes in heaven. My toes, they made contact with this grass. And when they did, I could feel the grass like reach up and hug my feet as they came down. I could feel the most unconditional love coming from the grass. Love that no one in this world could be worthy of. And it was just being poured upon me, poured into me. And then I noticed, I'm like, the grass has a sound. It had a a frequency, almost like a rainbow coming off of it. Uh, Kind of like what when you see the road on a hot desert day, you see how it shimmers. The grass was doing that, but it was organized. It was like listening to a little orchestra, or it was this beautiful sweet smell and flavor and even taste. I could taste it just by touching it. And all of this energy was just all pointed at me. And the only thing I could think of was, I'm not worth this. Like, that's, you got the wrong guy. And that's when Drake helped me understand that love's for all of creation, that it exists because we are part of the creator. We are, the creator made us. And because we are that piece of the universe, piece of our creator, that place loves us. It just loves us. I felt a part of me charging up and getting energy that I knew needed it really bad. And I had had a pretty rough upbringing. Uh, you know, uh, and in that abuse, that rough upbringing, I had a lot of cracks in my soul, a lot. And this love just was pouring into each one of those and mending it up. And Drake was just like sitting there smiling like a proud parent. And he saw me freaking out about the grass. And he started to laugh and he said, "If you think the grass is good, you should see the flowers."
Well, that's what I'm getting ready to ask you is, can you describe what else you saw? Did you feel like you were in the middle of a field or a meadow or a garden or a what?
So where I touched down, there was a hill over to this one side. There was this kind of lake looking thing. And then on the other side of the lake was this beautiful building. At From my perspective, I couldn't tell how tall it was yet. We did end up getting closer later. But it was, there was mountains in the background. There was these on the hill that was next to the lake. It was just covered with these cherry blossoms, but the blossoms were very different than what we see in our cherry blossoms here. But as I was freaking out about the grass, he showed me the flowers, and that's
How so were the cherry blossoms different?
oh, okay. So, with the way light works here is light is an outside source and it shines onto something, it reflects, and that's what makes us see color. There, color comes from within and light comes from within. So there is no outside sun there. It's like everything there is the sun. So all things there are source light. And these cherry blossoms, just to look at one, it was like beaming at you, and it was beaming happiness and love, and and it was almost like you could hear "I love you" coming from everything there. But I was freaking out about the flowers. Drake, he took my consciousness and he miniaturized it. He put it on a flower, and I was experiencing this flower. I was freaking out about it. I was doing, you know, uh, just if you could weep, you can weep there, but it's not like the physical weep here where tears pour out of you. You glow and you start shooting light out of you when you weep there. And I started to weep just because of the love I was feeling from the flowers. And then he said there's trees, and I started to discover the trees. And then water approached me. There was this little tiny creek of water, little stream, and part of it actually separated itself from the stream and came over to me and asked, "Do you want us on you?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And it came up over me, slowly, going up over every inch of my body. And by the time it went to my head, it sealed itself over me, and I was completely encapsulated by this water. My whole energetic being was. And I felt the finishing touches of sealing the cracks, mending the damage that life had put on me. I felt all of that happening at that last bit. And in reflection since, I truly feel that the act of baptism
I
is
was just gonna ask you about that. I got that too.
it's done in memory of what this is.
Yeah. I was getting that too, Vinny, was this was kind of like a type of baptism for you.
It's kind of like a baptism or an anointing or both, really. Yeah. And through all of that, I was just so enamored with all of it. I didn't want to even move from object to object, place to place. But Drake was definitely being my loving guide, like putting his energy at the small of my back and kind of nudging me forward into each step until it got to a point where I my focus was allowed to be on the building. And just in the small time I was focusing on it, I could tell it was a place of learning. It's a place where we learn truth, not other people's truth, but we learn actual truth, unadulterated truth. And whether it's true mathematics, true physics, true religion, or true anything, we learn absolute truths there. And that I saw many peoples from many different times. I also saw other beings that you could tell were not from like an earthly place, but a higher place, a place much higher than what Earth is.
How could you tell that? How could you tell it was from a higher place?
The light that comes off of the being, you could tell. I could tell what light I was, and I could tell looking at the other people. Their light was like mine, but then there was these other beings that they looked taller, a lot taller, and they had double the light. Like it almost, even though you don't have physical eyes, it felt like you had to almost block or squint just even try to know that there was that being there.
Did they look human or did they look like how we would picture?
They looked humanoid, but there was so much light on them, you couldn't distinguish whether they were angel or whether they were, actually looking like humans. You could tell they had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, but it was so much light coming out of them, you couldn't distinguish. I'm sure if I stayed there and I was able to raise my frequency even higher, I would get clear on who and what they are. Later, I started to learn who they were. Yeah. but many years after my experience.
And before you got to the building, did you see any other beings besides Drake and you? Or was
Yes.
it just kind of like it was just you 2 in this amazing garden?
Right as we were approaching the space of heaven, it looked like it was surrounded by clouds and just in the middle of space, like just dark space, and there's these bright white clouds. As we got closer and closer, I asked Drake, I was like, "Is that clouds? What is this?" You could see like a ring of clouds around this space. And I mean really broad band, big wide ring of these clouds around. And he took my consciousness and he brought it closer and closer and closer until I could see that what these clouds were was a bunch of these big orbs, these big pearls of light. And later I reflected that that's probably what we call the pearly gate. Is you could go into these pearls, and anything that you couldn't leave behind on earth, you were going to release that in one of these pearls. And then once you released it, you let the final dark energy off of you, whether it was victim energy. He let me see inside one of these victim pearls. And I saw a man and a woman, two totally separate lives. They couldn't see each other, but they were seeing in their mind's eye, or in their consciousness. They were seeing the person that they thought victimized them, and they were expelling all the negative words that they wanted to put on that victim energy. And until they could get done and there was no more left to give, as soon as they would do that, they would take kind of a deep breath, if that's what it looked like they paused their energy and intake energy, and then they realized where they were, and they weren't where they thought they were. And as soon as that would happen, real angels would come in, and then they were gone. They would take them. What I felt is they would take them directly into heaven from there.
What did the angels look like?
Oh man. There's thousands of different kinds. Some do have wings, especially if we identify with them as having wings. They show up to us the way that we want them to show up. And so if you don't believe they have wings, they won't show up with wings. But I will tell you this, even the ones that weren't showing with wings that I could see, there was so much love and power coming off of them. It was like the space around them went like this, like wings.
Like it moved.
It moved. Like they're so full of God's power.
Yeah, I've heard that from a psychic. He said that it's like there's light that comes off of them that looks like wings and it moves. I've heard that before.
But I did see a few angels with wings, and it's the different angels have different jobs. They all have different jobs, and there is thousands and thousands, probably millions of angels. But there was more than I could count with my consciousness, definitely more.
Did you find that when you got there, Vinny, that it was information being downloaded all at once, and then as you were progressing, you were like, "Oh, that's chapter 11 of my download," and it made sense to you? Or did you feel like you were getting
It's all packet download, and then as you can decompress it, you're figuring it out as you can decompress it. For someone who doesn't is not familiar how that works, it's like, you're walking through a hallway, okay, with a bunch of open doors. You walk past a door and you picked up the smell of spaghetti sauce, but you kept walking. But after you walk past that door, you're like, you're recalling that smell of the spaghetti sauce, and you're like, "Oh, wait, I could smell the garlic in there. Oh, I could smell the oregano in there. I could smell the basil. I could smell the tomatoes." It's like you can pick out the different details, even though the moment already passed. You're unlocking what that experience was, and that's how it all was. It was all so high definition, such high vibrational, such high data, like instant data transfer with the idea of just thought. It's as if here we're buffered. Everything that happens is buffered here. As soon as we get unplugged from here and get and allowed to be plugged into our home, there's no buffer. It's instantaneous.
Can you give us an example of something that you would experience here and then what The analogy would be of you experiencing in heaven.
Well, it took me a big part of my experience was after it was over, it took me a long time to decompress all of it for myself. And um, there's a couple of times I've gotten under hypnosis to see if the experience is different under hypnosis. And it never is. It's the same experience whether I'm just, conscious or in under hypnosis talking about it. But it in sharing it, discussing it, having people ask questions about it, it helps me unpack more of it. Really does. And over the years, having people ask questions, it helps me to even get a better identity to what it was for me. Yeah.
I want to go back to the download for a minute, just so that I'm clear. It seems to me like you got a big download, and then as you were progressing through different things, you were accessing the part of the download that was already in your spirit versus, okay, I'm going to go look at the cherry trees. I'm going to get a download about cherry trees. The cherry tree download was downloaded with everything all at once. And then you were accessing pieces of the download as you encountered them.
I
Okay.
feel like the download happened the second that I turned towards that warmth, that light, as soon as I had died. Yeah.
Okay. So then what happens? So you get to this building.
I'm this high energy, excited, young energies, just freaking out about this building. I had worked construction for most of my life, and I was seeing this building. I could tell it was made out of one piece of marble, the entire building.
Did, did it have columns? Did it look like a
It had columns. It looked like a combination between Greek and Roman architecture, but it was very also organic and flowing. You could feel that all the sharp edges were like kind of started to round or be natural. But the coolest thing is in all of that, when a person would enter or try to enter a room, you could tell there was this little interaction going on between the soul and trying to enter the room and the room. If they could match some type of energy limit, an opening would just form in the room, and they would enter the room. And then as soon as they would enter, like the portal or opening would just like seal itself, like it was a liquid marble. But through the whole building, you could see light like slowly moving through the whole thing. So it did feel very liquid. Um,
Was the light moving in waves, or was it just, like, kind of getting brighter and dimmer in different
it's
areas?
more like if you were to spill beautiful paint in water and watch it as it just slowly like moves around in that water, that's what it was like. But the light would have been what you would visualize the paint as. So the light was just slowly moving through the whole, but you could tell certain rooms were at a very, very high vibrational state because the whole room was just full of light. And that's saying something because that entire place is light. So to even distinguish there's even more light coming out of that space over there, it's a tribute to what was being discussed or being learned or whatever the energy was inside that room. Yeah.
When you went into different rooms, first of all, were you able to go into all of the
I
rooms,
wasn't
number
even able to
1?
go into one room, not even one room.
And number 2, were you seeing lots of beings going in and out of the room, or was it just like it was just there for your perspective?
I feel that I was seeing the edge of a much larger structure and system. I feel like I was at the edge of what is probably many buildings like this. From my perspective, I couldn't see over it. It was such a big deal to me. All I could see was it. And as I had the intention to get closer and to actually go in the building, go close enough to go in a room or try to figure out if I could. As soon as that happened, Drake actually came around in front of me, and he got right in my consciousness, and he said, in the most loving way, he said, "Vinny, this is going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it." and he brought me in for a hug. And if I'd thought that I'd experienced heaven, at that point, I discovered a whole nother heaven inside heaven. And that was this hug. That when you have the loving presence of two individuals coming together in unconditional love for each other. By this point, I love this man more than I'd loved anything in my life. And not just that, I was starting to remember a love I had for him from probably who I was before this life. But I was feeling so much love for him as he gave me this hug. And when we made contact, our two energies coming together, I felt a double pulsar. It was like boom, and then boom, even louder. And I could feel that each of those pulses were just light. And I could feel the power that the two of us coming together was the power of like eight of us. It was so much stronger when we came together like that. And as soon as we were in the middle of this hug, I then started to hear a prayer being given to my body. Now, my body had been brain dead for 3 days. I was in a coma for 3 days. And this is the third night that I'm in this hospital. My brother was there giving a prayer to my body. I could hear the prayer as if he was saying it in my ear in heaven. It was so loud I could hear it just right there in my ear. And as soon as he said amen to complete the prayer, I felt uh, immediate action. That prayer and the power of it, and in some way, there had to be a higher part of myself that allowed this, because everything is our choice. Everything is. And I allowed, even though I didn't feel like I allowed, I was forced back into my body. And my brother, he had given that prayer around 10 p.m. I woke up at 1:11 in the morning. All of my life support, I was on full life support. I was on oxygen. I was on the only thing that was working on its own was the heart. The heart was working on its own. But I woke up, I pulled everything off of me. I pulled my catheter out. I pulled everything out of me.
Ouch.
Yeah. And so I stood there. I couldn't even have a hospital gown touching me. I was so claustrophobic. Later in reflection, I realized that our soul is probably 5 to 10 times larger than our human body here. And so to come back into this body is very, very hard. And so I was claustrophobic. I didn't know why. I did not recollect yet where I had just been. It took me 24 hours to have that recollection come. And I think that was a sacred gift, because if I had remembered what I had just been pulled out of, I would have ran in the street and had a car run me over. I know I would have. I would have done anything possible within my power to get myself back there, even though that action might not have allowed me all the way back. But in this happening, I pulled all the sensors off me. I realized I was naked. I grabbed a gown that I found in the cupboard and wrapped them around me. And then I walked out of my room. I found an elevator. I was at the elevator hitting the down button when I heard screams. And the screams were coming from the nurses that were on duty that night. And I knew intuitively that the two nurses that were overseeing me that night, that they would have gotten in a lot of trouble if I had escaped and just walked home. And I probably would have gotten picked up by police or something. So I did go back to my room. Um, it took me a while just to allow a gown to be put back on me fully. I was just so claustrophobic. The only thing I'd let them do is put the little heartbeat cuff on your finger. But the second they leave the room, I'd pull it off. I couldn't have even things touching me. So for the next 6 hours, I battled the entire hospital staff.
Why do you think that was? Why do you think you couldn't have the electronics on your body after coming back into your body?
I feel like it's because I came from such a high vibrational state. to even be near an imitation of that, which electricity is an imitation of that vibration there, it felt so shorted compared to where I had just been. And I also felt like there wasn't enough room for my soul in this body. I needed like 10 more bodies for this soul to be in. I just felt, you know, it's kind of like opening up a can of tuna, but what comes out is a blue whale. And then somehow you force it back into the can of tuna. That's what it felt like to me. I felt like I was the blue whale forced back into the can. And I felt constricted. Even people talking me too long, I'd say, I need you to leave. I need you to leave. Like I couldn't have people even talk to me for too long for just that first little bit. Well, they did put me through a whole bunch of tests. They scanned everything, they test everything, they drew a bunch of blood. A couple of my doctors were saying that I was a miracle. I didn't feel like a miracle. I didn't. I felt cursed. At that moment, I didn't remember the heaven experience. I could only remember going to that burger joint that Saturday morning. Well, fast forward, I finally get to through 6 hours of tests, and I passed all of them. And they had to let me go. I was I was mentally fine, at least enough to check yourself out of a hospital. And so I checked myself out of the hospital. My dad came and picked me up, and I went back to my life. It it was surreal that first day. I didn't work. The very next day I did go to work, got done with that work, and it was that night I was eating dinner with my family, my extended family, and my sister, she came and kind of cornered me in this restaurant, and she said, she's always called me by my middle name. She was like, "Todd, you were dead. You were dead. Did you see anything?" And my mind formed the words, "No, idiot, leave me alone." That's what my mind was gonna say to her. And that's just kind of my rapport with my sisters. We joke around like that with each other. And as I tried to say that, what came out of my mouth is I saw the light. I saw my guide. His name's Drake. And then I tried to say more, and I just started to weep. Just weep, a heavy, deep weep. It was so bad I had to go into the bathroom for like 20 minutes and just cry it off. It that was when I realized something else happened, and it was unlocking as I tried to shut it down and say nothing happened. It all was coming out of me. Well, I kept thinking about this neurologist. So I had a neurologist that he had to check me out and clear me to get out of the hospital. He met with me for like 20 minutes, that morning that I was getting checked out, and he said, "Be very careful about your memory because you lost oxygen, you're brain dead for a few days. Your brain's just going to make things up for that space. Make sure you don't believe that's real." And so he planted that in me. And I know that was part of the higher path, the destined path, because it made me really struggle with what was going on in my mind. It forced me to go and seek mental help in the mental health field because I was hearing voices. I could hear spirits. I could hear sometimes people's thoughts still. I could hear Drake almost on a daily basis. And this is all going on, and I'm thinking, I'm crazy. I'm crazy now, and I think I went to heaven, and I think all these things happened, and there's no way it could have happened. I was here. I was trying to battle that out in my mind. Well, with this one health professional, he very kind man, like amazingly kind man. He explained what was going on. He said I was delusional and I had this other thing kind of like schizophrenia, and that he was going to put me on some medicine and it was going to help, and he'd check on me a week after I was on these meds to see if it was better. If it was, we'd continue with that. If not, we'd move on to something else. Well, as he's writing the prescriptions, this is back in the day when you actually wrote prescriptions by hand. As he was writing them, he had signed one, he was writing two more. this woman like shows up and she says, "Don't take those don't take those prescriptions. You need to remind him of something." And I go, I'm not going to tell a mental health professional I see a spirit that's telling me to tell him something. And that's when Drake came in and Drake said, "Don't you dare take those prescriptions until you tell him what she said." And it wasn't a big deal. It was about 3 sentences. Took me 90 seconds to say. But I told him, I go, "Sir," I said, "Doctor, I have a spirit here. She feels like a grandmother figure to you." And she said, you know, she explained where she had saved him as a child. He lost it. This really kind doctor, he said, "Get the F out of my office." And I was like, "Oh crap, what happened?" And I was like, "Should I take my," and he's like, "Get out." And so I turned around, I left, and his little nurse slash secretary there, she was like, "What did you say? What did you say?" Because she's kind of like listening into all of this. And I said, I don't know." And so I left. And on my drive home, my cell phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew it was probably him. I picked it up, and he said, "Vinny, number one, I need to apologize. That was very unprofessional." He said, "You brought up memory I forgot I had." He didn't know that he had gone through something very traumatic as a child and that his grandmother had saved him. He had not thought about that since his childhood. He didn't know that that was the secret trauma inside of him that moved him into the mental health field. And he explained all this. He just said, "I'm very sorry I acted that way." He said, "Whatever's going on for you, I can't explain it. My medical training can't explain it. But what I need you to know is there's truth there. So you need to go maybe meet with a priest or meet with a bishop or something. You need to go meet with clergy and figure this out." And so that's where I went with it. I did. I tried to meet with clergy. I found a clergy that I identified really well with, and so I talked to him a couple times about it, and he just said, "Hey, God talks to all of us in different ways, and maybe this is how God's going to talk to you." He did give me some of the best advice I ever had, though. He said, "Check everything you receive against your heart." He knew me, and he said, "Vinny, you have a really good heart. Make sure you're checking it against your heart. And if it feels like it coincides with your heart, then trust it." And so that's where I started. I I started revolutionizing my own life. I deleted all the phone numbers of people that I knew I shouldn't have their phone numbers in my phone. I I I just started changing everything about who I was. And in that process, um, I met an angel, a really like an earth angel. I met my wife. We knew the second we met each other, there was something cosmic there. And we knew right away we were gonna get married, even though we had never even been on a date yet. And in fact, we had discussed marriage before our first date. And, it was that alone was a miracle, and that miracle led to more miracles. A great miracle added to those was 7 months after my experience, I was in this little town of Wyoming. I was watching a historical presentation on this town of Afton, and they were talking about the leaders of this town and how they had established and zoned and set up society there, set up civil society and farms, and all of a sudden up on the screen comes this picture. I wasn't paying attention. This kind of thing wasn't my thing. But Andrea, at the time she's my fiance, she was looking at the screen. She goes, "That's your guide. That's Drake." And I had told her everything, and we had talked about it for like so many hours that she felt she was very well versed in what Drake was, who he was. I had described him 7 ways to Sunday, like every way I could think I had described him. So she felt she knew who he was. When she said that, my automatic response was, "That's not Drake." And I turned and looked, and I saw Drake. It was him. It was unequivocally him. It was, even though it was a black and white photo, I could see his eyes like piercing me the way that he did in spirit. And I recognize his last name on the picture. It didn't say his name is Drake though. It says his name is Charles, but it said his last name was Kazare, and my grandmother's a Kazare. So I went directly there to my grandmother's house, and I said, "Grandma, tell me about Charles Kazare. Who is this guy?" And her exact response was, "You mean great grandpa Drake? He's kind of famous."
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Wow.
And so she explained that, yes, his name was Charles, but only his family and really like his best friends would call him Drake. That was his middle name, but it wasn't on any of the official, he worked for the state, he worked for the county. He had worked for a couple of different states. He had ran for office. So in their family, he had arisen to some pretty neat offices as well as clergy. He had been elevated clergy too in that society. So she explained that Drake was only saved in exclusively for like his best friends or really close family.
You can't make that up, Vinny.
No, it was really neat for me because now I could throw away those words of that neurologist. Now I love neurology and I've studied it actually since. But I will tell you, it took me that 6 months to let go of what he said and embrace truth, embrace what happened, because there was no possible way that I could logically justify my brain pulling a face out of the cosmos who happens to be my great 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 grandfather, who I had never seen his name, never heard his name, never saw his face. And that's where my story begins. That's where my old self ends. And that's where my new self begins. Is since that point, I have tried to live my life in a way that I honor that experience. I honor the voices that I work with on a daily basis. I don't definitely don't classify myself as any kind of medium, but definitely I hear the voice of intuition very loud.
Well, you are a medium. Absolutely. Yeah, everybody is.
Everybody has mediumship. I will say that. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
everybody communicates with spirit, whether they're aware of it or not.
Yep.
And then the more you do it and the more you learn to trust it, the more it just comes in and it's second nature.
Well, it's surprising how many intuitive people I've worked with that had been using it for decades and not knowing. They just kinda take it for granted as, "I don't know, I just knew?" Like, you knew because you were listening." Yeah.
All right, I got about a bazillion questions for you in the
Sweet.
in the time we have left. First and foremost, do you believe that Drake, your what did you say, quadruple great grandfather, was really your spirit guide, or is that how your spirit guide showed up to you and used that name in order for you to be able to validate that later on down the road, even though you didn't know that that was going to happen?
Well, what's neat is when you get the understanding I have now, it's yes to both of those.
Okay.
That he is my guide, but he also represents, a piece of me, a higher piece of me that that would be a common piece that both of us have. Yeah.
Okay. When you were in your coma and inside the body bag and laying on the floor in the restaurant, do you believe that a portion of your spirit stayed with the body and then most of your spirit was up above, kinda like if it was plasma and there was like a glob of plasma in the body, but the biggest part of the glob was above the body watching what was happening?
Well, I've learned that our soul is so much bigger and more complex than we can understand. and that it reaches out to all space, and the way that we're plugged into the quantum field, which is God, which is life, which is soul, which is spirit. There had to be a piece of me that stayed to to kind of be with the body to help keep it alive. But I do know that there's also assistance, that there's angels and there's even souls that will go and kind of hold space in the body to keep it going while the actual soul goes and learns. I've seen it a few times now, in cases like mine. But there is attendance though. There's something or someone attending to that body from the spirit side or from the heaven side, unequivocally. Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get back in my body.
There are lots of people that have been through NDEs that remember little bits and pieces. Yours seems to be very comprehensive, very clear, very concise of what you experienced. Why do you think that is? Why do you think you had the experience, and why do you think you remember it?
I think I've hacked that. I think I have hacked what that is.
Uh-huh.
I'm part of the IONS organization,
Right.
and over the few years I've been in that group, I've been able to work with a lot of other experiencers.
Explain what IONS is for people that don't
So
know.
IONS is the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and just a gift from heaven itself. It really is.
I've spoken actually for them. I've been a guest speaker for them. Yeah, they're lovely.
Yeah,
People
I
are
love
lovely.
it. I got to keynote this last year with them, and it was just absolutely amazing. I loved
Great.
it. But
Uh-huh.
but in being there and working with so many, I found one common thread, that when someone has a very extensive remembrance of their near death experience, or for some of us after death experience, um, there's a common factor, that they had a background of abuse, almost exclusively, almost exclusively.
So what do you think why? What's that have to do with anything?
Well, that again, I had to figure out over the years. When you're an abused kid, that really forces you to turn on your intuition faster and sooner than most people. And the reason why is it's your survival. When your abuser is heading towards your home and you know they are, you need to know what shape they're in before they get there. And so you start creating this hyper awareness. In the medical field, they use the term HSP, or highly sensitive person, or
Right.
empath.
Right.
You essentially are a force activated empath when you receive enough abuse. And so to me, that's a silver lining to the abuse that I had, is that it really activated that hyper awareness, and I still carry it today.
And you remember being a child having it where you can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, hundreds of experiences that I can remember where I just knew things I shouldn't know. One time I was cornered by a bunch of bullies. I was in kindergarten, and a bunch of sixth graders had cornered me, and they were going to punch me in the face if I couldn't tell them some random bit of information, something I didn't know. And I just rattled off, blah 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 blah, and all of them went wide eyed. They were like, "Oh, he does know what he's talking about," and they left me alone. And I remember going home and asking my dad, "Dad, what does this mean?" And he hit me. He's like, "Don't you like, I said some things that I shouldn't know about." And it was something that kids shouldn't know about. It was like, it was just is it was neat to look back and see that I had that intuition. I was saving it and using it for survival. I was using it for preventing harm or preventing abuse. And so it was something I definitely carried before, but most kids do. You look at kids in a house, and most of the lights are out, they go run around, turn on all the lights. And when they're turning off the lights, they feel like there's things chasing them. Even they have an awareness that we lose as we get older.
Right. Yeah, all kids have intuition, and they can see spirits and communicate with spirits and all of that. Then they start to shut it down.
Yeah.
It's been my experience around the age of about 6 or 7.
Six. Yeah.
Um,
Six is what I've figured too.
Primarily because there are grown-ups in their world say, "Oh, honey, that's just your imagination. That's not really real." Or their friends are saying, "Man, you're weird. There's nobody there. Who are you talking to?" Or teachers or grandparents or whomever. And so that's what my children's books are about.
It's like having imagine someone's a radio and they're picking up a radio station. How are they doing it? They're tuned into it.
Right,
But everyone around them doesn't hear that radio station, so they're like, "That doesn't exist."
right.
And they convince the individual to tune out
Correct.
what that is, and that's the matrix, that's the paradigm of society. Yeah.
Yeah. Couple more questions as we're winding down. Why do you think you were sent back, number 1, and do you believe that you have a different mission, if you will, since you've returned? And what is that mission, and what have you done with that? So that's about 5 questions all in one.
I know I was sent back for purpose. Everything that's done in this universe is with purpose, everything. Even the good things, the bad things, all has purpose attached. And the depth of that purpose is omnipresent. It's in all directions, all possibilities. And so there was definitely purpose for me coming back. My life has changed. I live differently. Am I even close to perfect? No way. I'm so human, but at the same time, I am plugged into spirit. So in my human moments, I do have spirit to sit there and say, you shouldn't be doing that. And it's pretty loud. So it does make life a lot harder to be human, to be the normal average human and make your ignorant mistakes. You can't claim that ignorance anymore. In most cases, the only times I can still claim that ignorance is when spirit shuts down or I'm shutting it down. Uh, Sometimes on purpose because I'm fatigued with what's going on. But it has caused me to live completely different, and I feel truly to the deepest part of my soul that not just me, but all of these individuals that have been sent back, it's so that we can remember who we are. We can remember where we came from. The veil of existence here, it helps us forget everything. And we forget that we are a divine masterwork. That if we made it just to life on earth, we're the cream of the crop. We're the royal family of the cosmos. And we forget it. And to me, my purpose is to help people remember it, to help people activate their own intuition, to help them find their own higher path. To me, that's the purpose I was sent back with.
Is that doable when somebody's going through a less than optimal or even a horrific time in their life if they're experiencing something that's just really awful in their opinion?
Sometimes the hardest thing for us to do is to get out of the micro into the macro. And when we're in the micro, we're living in tunnel vision. We can only see this big problem that fills up all of our space and consciousness. But if we can take a moment to accept what's there for just a minute, accept what is, and zoom out and know that there's higher purpose in all things. And if you will open yourself to that knowledge, it is a knowledge, whether you want to accept it or not, doesn't matter. It is a knowledge. There is higher purpose in all things. That even the death of a loved one, even the loss of a job, even the forced moving of your house, or struggling with mental illness, there is divine purpose in all things. And if you'll zoom out of the micro into the macro and try to receive the gift of the present, you'll come into alignment of knowledge to know what that gift is. But it does mean we have to get out of our own way. We have to exit the victim mind, because the victim mind is a cage, more real than a prison cell. And if we can't exit it, we will never get out of the micro and into the macro.
Have you figured out how to build a building out of one block of marble that lights up when somebody gets near it yet?
I've learned that as you learn to speak the frequency of that marble, you can ask it to become anything and it will become that. But you have to figure out the love frequency. Yeah. If you look at the ancient sites in in the Americas, or not the Americas, well, yeah, in South America, you look at even Egypt, where these rocks form almost like liquid to each other. In that society, they had the gift that we've lost to speak to the frequency of that stone. So they could ask the stone to liquefy, not using heat or friction, but using frequency. And I've seen this in my own life. I used to be a stereophile. I used to be big into to car stereo, especially when I was younger, in my teens, my late teens. And I had one car that when you turned one specific song on, you could watch your car door turn into liquid, and it would just go like a snake back and forth. And that's just resonance, that's cymatics, that's the power of using frequency and sound to resonate with physical substance and watch the physical substance change. It's the same as playing a tone in a crystal shop and causing crystal to shatter.
So, are you still in the construction business and are you using this now in your building and in your projects?
I'm in the human construction business now, and I've been working with people, helping them build and change their lives, their own lives, at the same time as kind of trying to follow my mission from my experience. And I stayed in construction for quite a while, for about 12 years after, and then decided I needed to stop avoiding my destiny and start working with people. And I started part time, and it took off from there. And now it's been years now. This is all I do, and it is my destiny. It's it's the hardest but the most fulfilling job I've ever done.
Mhm. Okay, really, I promise this is the last question. There were more that kept coming into my head. Why do we incarnate?
um, when we are in the heavenly realm, we recognize that anything that God wants, we want. And we recognize that we can't really have enough individuality because we are so in love with our creator and our creator in love with us. And we know, just like children as they grow up, we have to move away from home to learn who we really are. And that's what incarnation is. That's what is coming to earth. Is we want to see who we are. But it's no test. It's kind of like we train, we learn our gifts, our talents, and then we jump into the game. And we see if we know our gifts and talents. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, and we sometimes we get done and we're like, that's not enough, coach, put me back in. And sometimes it's enough. But I'll tell you, all of it is free choice. It's all because of our agency. We may make a bad decision over here, and we know that that bad decision makes us have this experience over there, right? This to there and there to this. But it's still our choice. It's all our choice. If we want to be done with it, we're done. But we get drunk with God's love. We do. So we get done with this life. We get over there and we're like, oh, but there's more, isn't there? Oh, I could do this. I could do. So that's why, we are eternal souls. It's not just this 80 to 100 years we're here in this life. We are eternal. And we know in physics that energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change from form to form to form. And who and what we are is an energy. We were eternal before this, we'll be eternal after this.
Beautifully said. You're a remarkable man with a remarkable story, sir.
Thank you,
Goodness.
Julie.
Wow. What a story. I'm impressed with the recall and with the insights that you've received both in heaven and also since you've returned, and how you've parlayed that into not only shaping your life to be one of purpose and joy, but also to be helping others establish the same thing. How can people learn more about you and your work?
I have a nonprofit. I run I pretty much do everything I do through my nonprofit. It's called livinggodslight.org. And yeah, I've got a couple of books. My first book, it's on Amazon. It has my story, has the whole story, the a little bit longer version than what we talked about today. Um, and yeah, that's where everybody can find me.
Okay. We'll put that in the show notes so people will be able to find it. Thank you so much
Yeah, thank
for
you, Julie.
joining us and for sharing your wisdoms and your wisdom and your experiences and your insights with all of us. Your story, it's going to touch everybody that hears it. There's no way it can't. And I love how it's not only the story of when you were in the body bag and revived. I mean, it's like, it's so incredible. And then when you're in heaven, and then you find out that Drake is your what quadruple great grandfather. I
Yeah,
love
great
that.
great great grandfather. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just an amazing story. So everybody will be touched by
Thanks
this
for
who
thanks
hears
for
it.
having me join the Julie Ryan family, because from what I hear, it's a pretty amazing family. So
No,
thanks for letting me be an adoptee.
absolutely. My honor. Alrighty, everybody. We are sending you lots love from Sweet Home, Alabama, mwah, and from
From
Nevada,
Las Vegas.
where Vinny is. Of course, Vinny in Las Vegas. I mean, that's so perfect there too. We'll see you next time, everybody. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.